If you join us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Mary, you want to handle the roll call?
Good evening. I call the roll. Chair Pearson,
Present?
Bob Bouillon,
Here.
Christopher Campbell,
Present.
Yaya Jada, Emily Millis. Here. Lee Stolarski. Here.
Thank you. First up is the approval of minutes. We have the minutes before us. Are there any comments or corrections from anyone?
I have two corrections for you.
Okay.
There are two comments in here, one on page 2, one on page...
Chris, if I could ask you to bring the microphone closer to you.
Sorry. Two corrections, one on page 2 and one on page 5. They are questions attributed to Commissioner Campbell, and they were actually Commissioner Jurgensen that had asked those.
Enough identification for that? If you give it to Emily in writing when we're done. With those corrections, does anyone have any further ones? Like a motion to accept the minutes?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes
As corrected.
as written.
Yep.
Second.
Sorry.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. Jake Ingebrigtsen from the City Council is present. You have anything, words for us?
Yeah, I just want to say that tonight is a huge night for you guys. With the discussion of the Willowbrook project, if you guys give the thumbs up, it's going to come before council, I believe in September, or early October, first meeting in October, is that right?
No, it's coming in
So it'd be
September.
second meeting in September? Okay. So, and it's also my understanding that once council approves it, it's a done deal. I think that at that point, the real estate sale is finalized and dirt starts to move. Am I correct? Everyone's looking at each other.
No one knows yet then, I guess, Jake.
Yep, but that's my understanding, so, I hope you guys took a good, hard look at that. It's gonna be our last opportunity if we see any issues, so, big night for us. So, that's all I got.
Okay, thank you. Anyone have any questions for Jake? I guess none. I see Colleen is also here, if you wanted any comments, or?
No, I might add some comments or ask some questions later.
Okay, thank you very much. First order of business is the public hearing, a conditional use permit for a 171 square foot accessory building at 2411 Hines Avenue North. Brad Pavel. Mary, you're handling this one first?
Yes, commissioners. Brad Powell, who is here tonight, would like to build an accessory building on his property at 2411 Hines Avenue North. And that is here, as you can see, right on the town line. The structure would measure 14 feet 11 inches by 11 feet 6 inches, which is 171 square feet. And as you can see from this site plan, it would be in his side yard. And he's planning to use it for storage of personal effects. Mr. Pavel is in the R4 mid-density residential district, which single-family homes in that district are allowed one accessory building up to 120 square feet. And any buildings exceeding that are allowed via conditional use permit. And Mr. Pavel is here tonight for the conditional use permit because his building is going to be larger than that. This allows you guys the city, to review the request to ensure that the general and specific criteria in the ordinance are met, so that a larger building than is permitted by right is determined to be suitable. Staff has taken a look at Mr. Fable's property and the plan for the building, and determined that it meets the general and specific criteria for a conditional use permit. The general criteria are applicable to all conditional use permit requests, and say that the use will be in conformity with the city's comp plan. The conditional use will be located, designated, maintained, and operated to be compatible with the existing or intended character of the zoning district. I won't go through but the building in question meets or exceeds all of the criteria, the general criteria. The specific criteria for an accessory building are a little bit more specific to this use. The property where the structure is to be located cannot be reduced through subdividing because of lot width. So that criteria is met. The building is not a pole barn type building. It'll have a gravel pad foundation. No door or other access opening will be higher than 10 feet in height. And Mr. Pabble says it will be used for storage of personal effects, so it will not be used for commercial or industrial activities, which would be the other specific conditional use permit criteria for this type of building. That said, Mr. Pabble is here to answer any questions. I'm also happy to answer questions, but this is, staff has determined that it's fully within the bounds of the comp plan and the ordinances, and recommends approval of the permit.
Thank you, Ms. Cutrofello. Does anyone have any further questions for Mary?
No.
If not, then I guess I'd ask Mr. Pavel if he wishes to make any comments before I open the public hearing.
No, I don't have any questions.
Okay. Anyone have any questions for Mr. Pavel? Okay, then I guess I'll open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to make comment on this, please step forward. I'll ask a second time. If anyone wishes to make comment or observations on this issue, please step forward. If not, I'll close the public hearing. Bring it back here. Any other any comments before we vote on this issue? Then I would look for a motion.
I'll make a motion to recommend approval of the conditional use permit for a 171 square foot accessory building at 2411 Hines Avenue North.
Second.
Emily seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you much. Motion passes. Next issue is a public meeting in Willowbrook neighborhood, and Emily Shively is one presenting tonight.
And Mr. Chair, before Emily starts, due to a potential future business relationship with one of the applicants, I'm going to recuse myself from the discussion and voting on this application.
Thank you, Chris. Emily?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. I'm Emily Shively. I'm the Oakdale City Planner. And the application before you today is for the Willowbrook neighborhood, which is a brand new neighborhood in Oakdale. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the planning process, kind of how we got here. I will just note really quickly, this will be coming to the City Council next Tuesday, September 8th. So for the approvals after you make a recommendation here. So that's the timing for that. So the Willowbrook neighborhood is located, I think you can see in this map, we've got 694 that runs right through the center of the city. County Road 14, this is the forefront campus, the former IMation headquarters. Target is over here. And this is the outline of the new Willowbrook neighborhood. It's approximately 200 acres, so it's a fairly large site. 40th Street runs right through the middle. Ideal Avenue is over here on the eastern boundary. So what sort of started this conversation with the city, it happened almost 4 years ago. 3M used to own this site, and they decided they no longer wanted to develop it. So way back in time, 3M saw this as a location for future campus expansion from their Maplewood campus. But then in the mid-90s, they dialed back those plans. Their new campus was going to extend not just in Oakdale, but also over to Lake Elmo. So in the mid-90s, dialed back those plans, went to create a new building for Imation, which was a 3M spinoff. But then the rest of the area was going to be a multi-use office industrial campus. So another, several thousand square feet of industrial office. But in 2016, they decided they no longer wanted to move forward with those plans. So they were going to put this land up for sale. So at the time, the city was made aware that there really wasn't much industrial office development happening, and much less to the extent that had been planned for and approved for this area. So we were confronted with a question of whether or not we wanted to keep that idea of industrial office in that location or consider a change in the land use to something else. And at the time, and still, there's quite a bit of market demand for residential development. So the city said, we'll think about it, and we'll collect a lot of information to kind of make this decision to go from the industrial office to potentially residential. And that process is called small area planning. And so when you do that, you look at a number of different factors. We look at the physical characteristics of the land and the surrounding area, the market demand, like I was just talking about, like should it stay industrial, should it move towards residential? The financial viability of development kind of goes right with that market. And then thinking about infrastructure from streets to water and sewer and stormwater to parks and natural resources. So collecting all of that information, then we came up with a few new concepts for what a residential neighborhood might look like there. Those concepts were also based on a vision and a set of goals that the city council, and I think the planning commission was also involved in that process, for what we wanted out of a new residential neighborhood in Oakdale on on more than 200 acres. And so those things were, we really wanted to make this a special neighborhood. We wanted a variety of different housing types. We really wanted to take advantage of the natural features and preserve and enhance those. So as those concept iterations came forward based on those goals, they concluded in sort of one master plan that showed the arrangement of land uses, which is residential, different densities, different lot sizes and arrangements, the circulation system, so how would the road network work in this new neighborhood? And one of the key goals for the road network was that it have traffic calming characteristics and features. And so what kind of design tools could we employ for that traffic calming? Curvilinear streets, T-intersections with views of open space particularly help with that traffic calming. And also, you're not bringing headlights into someone else's, front windows and that kind of thing. So the benefit for the neighborhood as well. And then thinking about these as parkways and not just thoroughfares. So a pleasant experience, driving, walking, bicycling through the neighborhood. That was a goal for the circulation system. And then parks and open space. So Oakdale really values our parks and natural areas. So thinking about how we could conserve and enhance the natural resources that are there, but then also have kind of a unique park and open space system that wasn't just like one park in the corner of the neighborhood that you have to cross several streets to get to, but more an idea of parks dispersed throughout the neighborhood. So almost like you were living in the park rather than living on your block and then driving to a park. So those were some of the big ideas that the city had when we were coming up with this master plan for the neighborhood. So when that plan was articulated, we formalized the plan as part of the city's 2040 comprehensive plan. So this is the city's long-term vision for the physical development of the city. So, and this document is on the city website, a comprehensive plan. And then there's a special chapter at the end of it as an appendix that talks all about this site. And so it goes through in more detail a little bit what I just talked about, what the site had been initially planned for. I can just put this up on the screen really quick. This was that initial plan. All that yellow is buildings for 3M. The gray was parking lots. And then the plan was revised to kind of really shrink that down to their core campus, just in Oakdale and that area. Then it goes through the planning process, all the information that was gathered, the goals that were set, participation that we did with folks, getting different ideas about what makes a great neighborhood. And then that resulted in this conceptual master plan for the area. And so what this shows is 40th Street. So right now 40th goes straight through the site. Again, kind of that throughfare idea of circulation just from point A to point B. So the idea was to reconstruct 40th, make it more curvilinear, have parks and open space on either side of 40th so that it's a more pleasant experience, slows people down, enjoy the journey, don't just zoom through, and then keep it safer for the people who are living there as well. And then the yellow that's shown there are kind of the areas for home lots, a different color yellow south of 40th. The orange is smaller lots or multifamily housing. So that's how we took all those big ideas and created a plan that showed the land use, circulation, and parks and open space laid out on this particular site. So those goals, policies, and physical design is now city policy in the comprehensive plan. So I'm going to show you kind of a diagram that talks about how we do our land use review and approvals. And this is a little abstract. The Planning and Zoning Discretion Pyramid. It's an interesting title, but down here is this wide green band at the base of it. And that green band says that we have a lot of discretion for those types of policy settings. So in the comprehensive plan, that's that first foundational piece. That's when we have all these conversations about what do we want this to be, what do we want it to look like, set those goals and policies. Well then, if we want those to actually happen, we need to create some tools to give further guidance about how that should move forward. So this next piece that sits on top of that is the zoning ordinance. So for this neighborhood, that is one of the pieces we're looking at tonight, is how to take this comprehensive plan, which has those goals and policies for land use, circulation, parks, and open space, and put them in a set of design standards so that when someone comes in and wants to build this neighborhood, they know what the setbacks are for the houses, they know how the street sections should work, how wide are the roadways, how wide are the boulevards, where do the sidewalks go, and then for the parks and open space, where are the neighborhood parks, what is happening with the rest of the open space and natural areas and habitat enhancement, that sort of thing. So that is one of the things we're doing tonight, is looking at the Willowbrook Planned Unit Development Design Standards. So this is going to be part of the zoning ordinance. So that is that next piece there. And then as we move up with that, we go to subdivision and platting. So what we also have tonight is something called a detailed development plan and preliminary plat. So it's something that's kind of a special planned unit development process where we look at a site plan for the entire neighborhood and how the lots and blocks for the houses are arranged, where the right-of-way is for the roads, and then where all of the other spaces are for parks and open space, stormwater management, utilities, that sort of thing. So that needs to match the zoning, which is a reflection of the comprehensive plan. So all of these things kind of stack up. As we get into this yellow area, there's less discretion. It's like, does it meet those standards? If it does, then it continues to move forward through the process. And the other piece of this, being the detailed development plan, they gave us all of the information needed for a site plan. So to actually move forward with construction, which is grading and utilities and all of the landscaping and all of that. And so that gets up into the top part of the pyramid site plan review, where we're looking at, does this meet all of these different standards and requirements? If so, there's less discretion. It's just we've already established the policy. We've then established the standards and the rules by which development ought to occur. And so does this application meet those? If so, then it moves forward. So now I will move into talking about a little bit about this neighborhood. We can actually take a look at how this is laid out. Zoom back a little bit. There we go. So just like that conceptual master plan that I showed earlier, the landowner working with a builder has submitted a plan that needed to be in substantial conformance with what was in the comprehensive plan and these design standards. And the city council has a special role to make that determination, and they did that back in April. They looked at the plan, they looked at the comprehensive plan, they said, does this plan meet our vision and goals for this new neighborhood as we've laid it out in the comprehensive plan? And they said, yes, it does. So now the developer could move forward with coming up with all of those pieces with the site plan, the grading, the stormwater, the landscaping, et cetera. So just to walk you through what this end result is, again, we've got 40th Street curving through the neighborhood. It's going to connect at Ideal Avenue right across from Lake Jane Trail. So right now, the intersection of 40th at Ideal is offset from Lake Jane Trail, so this is going to make a safer intersection there. I do want to point out that these pink circles are simply indicating that there will be enhanced landscaping at those intersections. So it's just calling that out as a neighborhood gateway. So something to sort of trigger in your perception that I'm entering a special place, a distinctive neighborhood place. And so those are located at these key entrances to the neighborhood, just additional enhanced landscaping, similar to what we have down on 10th Street between Hadley and 694. We've got the grasses and the flowers and the flowering trees, something to say you've arrived at a special place. So that's what those circles indicate. And then north of that is the lower density housing, the homes really surrounded by parkland. So the kind of yellowish orange colors that are on the plan, those are areas that are going to be passive recreation areas. So it will largely be more native plantings, very low maintenance, new tree plantings kind of in groves through there. And then it's difficult to see on this overhead right here, but the plans are online and we could get you a copy if you're interested. But this also shows all the sidewalks and trails, and particularly the trails that go through the parks and open space. And so you'll be able to go from one end of the neighborhood through the open space, kind of all the way around here, up and through with fewer street crossings, be able to choose your own adventure as the trails, loop through the parks and natural areas. That's a key feature of this neighborhood. South of 40th Street are slightly smaller lots for a different housing type, and then an area of townhomes here. And then I'll just point out that there are 3 areas on the plan that will have future planning for site plans. So the buildings shown in this lower southeast corner of the neighborhood and these 2 multifamily buildings near 694, those don't have a builder yet. So eventually someone will come and say, yes, I want to do multifamily housing there. And at that time, we'll have a site plan for those particular sites. But right now, this is really, the lots and townhomes for the bulk of the development is what's moving forward right now. So in terms of what these applications do and kind of the phasing is it will take a while for this entire neighborhood to be built. So the builder will start in one area, build and sell homes there, move into another area, that sort of thing. So their idea is to start in this southeast corner first. And so then, but it'll kind of depend on how many people are interested in buying homes and that kind of thing in terms of how the timing of things going forward. So one of the things that's also before the Planning Commission for review is preliminary and final plat. And all that this does is it takes those 208 acres and divides them into larger parcels that then the landowner can sell for development. So as they come in, like I was talking about with this first phase down here, this outlot A corresponds to the townhome right there. So when they're ready to construct those townhomes, they will come back to the city with another plat for just this outlot that shows the location of all of the townhome units, the parking, the common space for the townhomes. So that plat will need to match this plan when that comes in. So just a kind of a technical process piece. So anyways, I want to conclude by saying that this plan has been reviewed against the comprehensive plan, against the design standards. It's found to be in conformance with those, and it meets the requirements and implements the goals and policies that have been established by the City Council. So staff is recommending approval of these 4 pieces that are happening in order to implement the neighborhood plan. One of them is the zoning ordinance design standards. So that's the thing that reflects the goals and policies in the comprehensive plan. And then applying those standards to this specific property. That's a zoning map amendment. Basically says those standards are now the regulations for this piece of land. The third piece is this detailed development plan and site plan that shows the arrangements of the lots, blocks, right-of-way, and parks and open space. And then the fourth piece is that plat with the large parcels of land for conveyance to builders so that they can start construction. So those are the 4 motions that are before the Planning Commission tonight for review. And I'd be happy to address any questions you may have at this time.
Thank you, Emily. I do have one question, more of a consistency question. I know you and I talked about it, the need to change some of the routes of the road that are in your zoning, or the Amendment C, zoning ordinance, page 8. The road construction in that upper right quadrant is different than what's shown on attachment G. And that's because of the pipeline. Does that attachment G kind of picture need to be put into the figure 2 to replace the original concept?
That's a great question.
Before you send it to the city council?
That's a great question. No, it does not. So the standards, and this is the same graphic that's in the comprehensive plan. So this plan needs to be in substantial conformance with this one. So what Chair Pearson is talking about is there is a pipeline that runs diagonally through the site across this corner. And the pipeline utility, at first, we thought we could run a road, basically just right in line with that easement, because there's another pipeline that runs north-south through the site. Hope I'm not blocking that, so it would be north-south through the site there too. And that pipeline, they were a little different. They said it's okay if you run your road through our easement, but there's 2 different companies, 2 different types of utilities. This one that was here said, we really want you to steer clear. We don't want any roads there. If we need to get in and do something with our pipeline, we don't want to disrupt the streets. And that would have been disruptive for some home lots that need that street for access. So the idea was, how can we reconfigure that road and still meet the goals of curvilinear streets, T's with with views of open space, and traffic calming, and then try to have a similar number of home lots in that area while avoiding the pipeline. And then there was also some further work done on stormwater requirements, making sure that we were able to manage all of the stormwater, rainwater that falls on this site so that it goes off the site at the same rate that it did before the development occurred. So this is what they came up with to try to figure that out, of how do we avoid that pipeline, accommodate some additional stormwater. So you will see that there's a little different arrangement of the blocks and streets in that corner to address that concern. So that was what the city council needed to say, this still meets all of the goals that we had when we came up with this plan. So because it meets that, we don't need to swap the picture. We just need to say, yes, it still meets all of those goals and the performance standards that are in the ordinance.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions for Emily? Marty, you had one.
Yeah, I had a couple questions. I know when this was going through the review process, the residents to the north had issues with the stormwater and tree removal. And has that been addressed? And
Sure, that's a great question. So there are existing neighborhoods right along that north property boundary. We've got the Sunborough neighborhood and Olson Lake Estates right there. And so we've got a number of existing homes that butt right up against this new development. So as they were designing the new neighborhood, their technical staff looked at grading, tree preservation, new tree plantings for, again, screening between the neighborhoods, and stormwater. So the outcome is that there will not be any stormwater going north of this site onto any of those home lots that are along there. And actually, they have figured out a way to keep sort of the existing flow of stormwater from those neighborhoods onto this site and treat that stormwater in this new neighborhood's stormwater system. And then all of the grading that needs to happen for the new homes up there will only happen on this property. It won't encroach onto the properties to the north. The new grading here will be required to match the existing that's there. And then we're going to try, there are some existing trees along that north lot line. And so when construction occurs, they will try to preserve sort of that root zone of any trees that are really in proximity to the development as much as possible. And then after sort of the ground has settled, there will be new tree plantings placed along this north boundary there to help screen between the backyards. There's also going to be at least one tree planted in front and one in the backyard of all of these home lots. There are also going to be street trees in the boulevard. It's not something that we don't have in a lot of places in Oakdale, where we have trees between the sidewalk or trail and the street to, again, create more of that tree canopy and enclosure alongside there. So yes, those concerns have been noted and will be addressed during construction.
I'm actually smiling because of the boulevard trees, but you can't tell.
Okay.
I know the city doesn't like them, but I think it's a great addition to any neighborhood. You answered most of my questions in your presentation on the phasing and the multi-family and the high-density sites. Just a couple other quick questions. Now, the building setbacks and the right-of-ways are all set in the PUD and then in the neighborhood designs. The things like the fencing and the other, what I'd call private developer installed improvements, now they're going to be privately maintained and enforced and regulated, is that correct?
So let me take this in a couple different pieces. The ordinance design standards do have, they mirror in a lot of ways our existing zoning ordinance for our residential neighborhoods. So very similar to what we already have in place in our residential neighborhoods. In some of the multifamily areas, we took some enhanced design standards that were applied at Tartan Crossing, so like for the waters, and also at Helmo Station, and applied them here as well to ensure high quality development for those multifamily areas. Since these are homes in a park, we have special standards for fences on private property that abut parks and open space. So the idea here is that we don't want to wall off the homes from the parks and open space. It's that idea of there being some transparency between the homes, some eyes into the park for safety, but also just to have that more contiguous feel of the homes and yards, but allow residents, you know, if you've got children or pets and want to kind of secure that area, but also thinking about having some consistency in the design of those fences so that where there is, you know, a block of homes abutting parks and open space, that they all have a uniform type of material and design. So that it's, you know, again, for that aesthetic character there. Where there are homes that don't abut parks and open space, so for example, this block where the rear yards just abut another rear yard, our existing ordinance fence standards will apply. So that's just going to be, you know, exactly what our ordinance is. For the multifamily areas, yes, if there are any private amenities, that's something that will be managed by the developer. But largely, the parks and open space are all going to be public. So anyone can use those. It's not just for the residents who live in these neighborhoods. So the city will be maintaining the parks and open space and developing amenities in these neighborhood parks and this central commons park area through a park planning process that is yet to occur.
Perfect, thank you. And then just the last question is, I know when this went through the neighborhood meetings and such, there was more of a detailed design for that commons area. I believe it showed like an amphitheater and some other types of seating nodes, things.
Page 8 shows that. As well.
Right, and on the site plan tonight, it just says commons. So I'm just wondering on the detail, one is if the city's going to review the details of that, and then I guess what is it going to be in the big picture of?
Sure, great question. So, yeah, and what you're referring to, I think I stashed my plan away. In that illustrative plan that was in the comprehensive plan, it did show some structure, like an amphitheater, some areas for some recreation. And again, that was sort of a vision plan for that. So it wasn't that this is what has to be there. But there's different character for the different parks and open space in the neighborhood. So this neighborhood park that's down in the southwest corner, the design standards say that that is intended to be an active recreation area. So similar to the soccer, football, ball fields that are out here at Walton Park, there's an area in the neighborhood that's designated for that sort of thing. So it's adjacent to the multifamily housing. If there's any lighting, there's specific standards for that, for field lighting, so that can be an issue. This neighborhood park is similar character, but it's going to be more passive open space, maybe play areas, maybe pickleball courts, something like that. Places to throw a frisbee, that kind of a thing, but a place that a number of people can gather. And so maybe more of a manicured area, similar to the neighborhood park here. The commons, the intent of that, the character of that space is to be a gathering space for more community events. And so that was the idea of having an amphitheater there if there were going to be performances, similar to the amphitheater that's here at Walton Park, where we do music in the park and things like that. However, we've designated space for that, and we've talked about the general character of that area, but the specifics have not been planned yet. So that's a future planning process to say what exactly does that look like? What are the materials if there is an amphitheater or a gazebo or picnic sheds, that sort of thing, and how are those activities laid out on that site? That'll be a future planning process.
Thank you, that's it.
As long as you're on this map, I brought up a question for you about looking at it. I said that's a lot of mowing for the city staff. What's the character of the mowing system going to be there? Because I know we talked, you've got different designations for different areas. Do you want to just sort of hint at what that is?
Sure, great question. So as part of the implementation, just like creating the design standards for all of the built environment, we're creating a landscape framework that's going to have design standards for the parks and open space. So what's shown here in the light green, that's probably going to be the only areas where we may have to mow. So this neighborhood is almost half open space when you consider the wetlands, the stormwater ponds, boulevards, parks. And so that would be a lot to mow if we were going to make that just a very manicured park. So the idea is, and again, this is one of the goals in the comprehensive plan, was to sort of restore the natural features of that land. So this kind of darker area that runs north-south and kind of swings out in various areas, there are some existing woodlands there right now with some really magnificent oak trees, some great views. So the idea is to go in and preserve and enhance that woodland area. So that may be removing buckthorn, taking out other types of invasive plants and trees, giving those beautiful oaks a little room to breathe and kind of show off what they are, taking them back to sort of the landscape that was here before all of the development happened, which was more of what's called an oak savanna, where you've got copses of trees, kind of clusters of trees, and then open prairie area underneath. And so that idea, this will be more thickly wooded, kind of enhancing what's there, but then as you get out into these other open spaces, it's more of those native grasses, so pollinator habitat, flowers, grasses, things for birds, butterflies, bees, that people can also wander through and enjoy. And then, specifically designed areas for some shade and a different type of plant community with taller trees, smaller trees, shrubs, that kind of thing. So these yellow and orange areas may need to be mown once a year, possibly twice a year, as it's getting established. And even along the boulevards, there's a different type of plant that is basically a really short grass or really short flowers. And so that you also may only have to mow once or twice a year, and it's great for pollinator habitat. So really the idea is to not have a ton of mowing out here, but to create beautiful areas that people can enjoy, but also provide habitat for other birds, animals, that kind of thing.
Thank you. Anyone else have questions? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation. That's very educating. One question I have, so with the open space concept, so I've been in St. Paul for quite some time, city of St. Paul, but we really never had the open space concept until the foresight came up, opened up. And now we have regulation of open space, and there's confusion about open space and park space. So could you explain to me how park space is and open space differ or how they're similar? And the reason why I asked this is that we just had our first variance at the Foresight, where they have this building lot coverage and the open space coverage. And there's confusion in the public because the general feeling is open space is spaces open and accessible to the public. But in the definition, open space in St. Paul is not quite the same, the way they're thinking. So could you explain to me how in Oakdale it's different
Sure.
or similar?
Yes, that's a great question, and I can see where the confusion may come up. So parks, the way that we're showing them here, are places where a lot of activities may happen, where we do a higher level of maintenance, and that they are all open to the public. So that's these three areas, the neighborhood parks and the central commons area. Those parks are part of the park and open space system. So the other idea was that this was sort of like an emerald necklace neighborhood where we've got these green gems as well as these blue gems with the stormwater and ponds, and they're connected with these chains of open space. So parks are a discrete type of land use. The open space system encompasses those things that are not part of buildings and privately owned. So they also include the pipeline easement. So that's an area that's got some use restricted because of the type of utility that's there, but we can still run a trail along the side of it, and we can still plant those native grasses in that area and have them be part of the system that's enjoyed by people. We also have areas of existing wetlands and places we need new stormwater ponds. So those are integrated into the open space system. So you're not going to be swimming in them. You're not, you might go catch frogs or something like that, but they're not meant to be areas that are actively inhabited. So the open space system is a much more umbrella term for all of those areas that aren't part of the private lots. There's still, going to be private open space in the yards, front, back, side yards, but that's not considered part of the park and open space system. So, that makes sense? Okay.
Thank you.
Bob, you had something?
Yeah, I wanted to make sure I'm reading this properly. For instance, in the Commons Park, 3 areas of blue on the left, that's water? The colors are a little bit hard to, right? Is that correct?
Yes.
So all this blue is water up in the south, the northeast quadrant, correct?
Yes.
All right. Whereas the darker green on the left, that's the woodland reserve, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure. And the only roundabout is right in the center, joining the neighborhood park and the commons, whereas the gateways are pretty much Ts that are going to be enhanced through nice trees and bushes and that. Okay.
Yes, that's correct. Yep, just one roundabout at the center there.
And is there any lights anywhere planned, particularly at 40th, currently 40th and Hadley?
There are no lights currently planned. There may be signalized intersections on Ideal.
Okay. Along the eastern side. Okay.
Anyone else have any questions for Emily? Okay, because at this point, we'll open the public hearing, or anyone wishing to, public meeting, if anyone wishing to make comment on this issue, please step forward. Step forward, please.
I'm Connie Stanton. I live on 43rd Street on the top of there. My lot will abut one of those lots. My question is, are you going to have fences around all of the open space? So up on the top where there's that water, are you going to have fences go all the way around there?
So there is an existing fence right now that 3M had installed around their property. And from what I understand is that that will largely be removed once the development occurs. So there is no plan right now to fence in the ponds. Those will just be part of the open space system with
But you
plantings.
were talking about the fence, you're fencing around that's not what you were talking about before, that you're putting up fences around where you're going to have walkways and things?
Yep, I have a picture that might help show what we're talking about. So for fences, and this is in the design standards, the new city ordinance. So what we're looking at so here are homes where there's a trail that runs between the two homes. And so here's the trail kind of from the bird's eye view. Here's the trail, from more of your perspective view, walking along there. So we want to make sure that they're not super high fences there, just kind of delineating the public and private space, and then some transparency in those fences.
So when the walking trails come through the neighborhood, that's where you're going to put up fences?
If a resident wants to put up a fence, they can.
Okay, so
following these standards.
So the development's not putting up any fences?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then does the developer have the discretion of changing like the lot lines that you have on this final? I don't know if it's final, but the one, like the one you sent me with where they think the houses are going to be, can that change after the full council votes on it?
No.
Okay.
So this is the setup. So if something needs to shift just a little bit because they run into some soil issue or something with grading, but no, the number and type of lots will stay the same. The road locations, the parks and open space will stay the same as the project goes forward.
Okay. I think that was all my questions.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe not right now, but maybe after we're done with the public comments, maybe you want to go into what the definition of substantial conformity means then, so people understand that. Anyone else have any questions or comments to make? The second time, anyone have any further comments to make or questions? Seeing none, Emily, if you've got the time to answer my question on the substantial conformity
Sure.
question.
So when the city council approves this detailed development plan and preliminary plat, that is the plan for the neighborhood, with the exception of the building and parking layouts in these three areas. So this is the time when we are setting that, and it will not change from that. If there's any alteration and there's a reason for that, it's got to be kind of a technical change, not a substantive change. So just like we had to redesign this area for the pipeline, that's not going to happen again. We've dealt with the pipeline issue, we've dealt with the stormwater. This is going to be the layout for that.
So on that map, all road layout and park layout and amenity, those kind of amenities are all fixed
Yes,
as far as substantial conformity, no variation from that.
correct.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions of Emily? Okay, there are four motions that need to be made? Do we need to make them all as separate ones, or can they be combined as a single motion to pass all four?
I'd take them all separately.
Separately? Okay. Attachment C is the ordinance amending the code for the city ordinances. Do we have a motion for attachment C?
Attachment C. The first motion is for the zoning.
Yep, so the first motion
Is the
is for the
motion.
zoning ordinance
Zoning.
text amendment.
So
Yep.
I will make a motion to recommend approval of a zoning ordinance text amendment to create the Willowbrook Planned Unit Development District and Design Standards.
Is that attachment C or D?
That was
That's zoning.
attachment
That's the zoning.
C. Yep, so in your packet, attachment C was the zoning ordinance text amendment. Yep,
Yep.
so that's the motion, that's what we're
That's the
making a
one we're
recommendation
doing.
on right now. Yep.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Attachment C, zoning ordinance passes. Attachment D, an ordinance rezoning the Willowbrook area from, that's the next one?
Yep, so now we're applying those ordinance standards to this particular area, and that's the zoning ordinance map amendment.
So I will make a motion to recommend approval of a zoning ordinance map amendment to rezone the subject property to Willowbrook Planned Unit Development.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes.
Yep, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Before we do the next one, so this is the resolution for the detailed development plan preliminary plat. And it's got a number of specific conditions so that as this moves forward to development, we, address any little details and make sure that, yes, this plan gets built this way. Our staff was working with the applicant today. As this project is moving through the approvals process, the Valley Branch Watershed District, they regulate all the wetlands and stormwater. So they've been looking at this to make sure it meets all of their standards. And so we have two conditions in this next resolution that we no longer need because they've worked out a way to accommodate the stormwater and infrastructure without meeting these conditions. And those conditions are number 18, and that was about the location of the storm sewer. And so that the way that it has been shown on the plans is appropriate, and so we don't need that to be relocated, and that's what condition 18 says. So we'd like to remove condition 18. And also, condition 19 was about setting the elevation of the home next to a stormwater pond and wetland in such a way to make sure that there's no flooding issues. And as they looked at that particular area, it's not designed to be a pond that has a lot of water in it. So that elevation change is not as essential. I think I'm characterizing that in the right way, looking at the engineer. So that condition is also no longer needed. So what we would like to do is just note that this resolution and the motion that you're recommending reflects that we no longer need conditions 18 and 19 as it moves to the city council.
So 18 is the storm sewer and 19 is the lowest floor elevation?
Correct. Yep.
Okay, I'll make a motion, a resolution approving the detailed development plan, preliminary plat for the Willowbrook Planned Unit Development with conditions, striking numbers 18 and 19.
Do I have a second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Then that motion, or that resolution as amended, it passes. And the last one is the resolution for the plat.
I will make a motion to recommend approval of the preliminary final plat for Willowbrook with conditions.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Then that motion passes also. Thank you, Emily. I think that concludes that portion. The next one is for the planning and development update. Emily?
Yes, thank you, Commissioners. Well, good work. This is kind of a fun way to see things move from that comprehensive plan level through zoning to actual implementation of a plan. So it'll be exciting to see this move forward. Other projects that are moving forward, the Auto Zone up by Speedway, by Target, they are under construction. So if you've been up by there, you've seen earth moving. That should go pretty quickly now. And then also the Park Tool Edition on Hadley up near 50th, they have started construction as well. Those were the projects that were approved in June, so they're underway. I don't know if we have any applications for October yet, so we may or may not have a meeting in October. So with that, happy to answer any questions, or we're all done.
The development next to Speedway, the Auto Zone, do you know if that's actually detailed on the city website? Because I know there were a couple of messages on the neighborhood forums that people were saying, what is this, et cetera, et cetera. I just wondered if it was published on the city website.
So the Community Development Department does a newsletter every month, and that is on the website. And we did just put in some new information and photos in there as an update for construction there. And if anybody ever has any questions about what's happening around the city, they can feel free to contact me, and I can provide them with more information.
Excellent, thank you. That brings us to the last item for adjournment. Do I have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned.
Thank you.